Hi, everyone.
Hello again. We are in the Pure Worship book, page 183, in the chapter I Am Against You, O Gog. And suddenly they switch the discussion to the King of the North.
And go to Daniel.
And we're going to Daniel, which we will do in obedience to what they want you to read, which they put in capital
Bold.
letters and in bold. Read these verses, but there's only one verse you really refer to here. You don't refer to the context, but I don't know.
If you read the context.
Read the context.
Yeah.
So we will do that. And what do they have to say, though, before all this to make the link between Gog and the King of the North?
So we'll just read this section. The King of the North, read Daniel 11, verses 40 to 45. Daniel foretold the march of world powers from his day down to our time. The prophecy also mentioned rival political foes, the king of the south and the king of the north, each of them having changed identity over centuries as various earthly nations have fought for supremacy. Regarding the final campaign of the king of the north in the time of the end, Daniel said, "He will go out in a great rage to annihilate and devote many to destruction." Jehovah's worshippers are the primary target of the king of the north. But like Gog of Magog, the king of the north comes to his end after failing in his attack on God's people. But they had a footnote there which said, Daniel 11:45 indicates that the king of the north will target God's people, for it says that this king will, this king will plant his royal tents between the Grand Sea, Mediterranean, and the holy mountain of decoration, where God's temple once stood and where God's people worshipped.
So I would say, even before we go to the next paragraph, notice that they're doing the same thing as they did in Ezekiel 38:39. They're taking a phrase from here and a clause from there and combining them into this chaos, this soup, really, of their own making. And just reading the text will, for one thing, amplify what you just said about, in the footnote, it says the Grand Sea is the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is inserted. That's your interpretation.
Yeah.
And it's right for once, i.e. this is a place. It's, in fact, this great sea, the only great sea that most people in the Middle East would know of, at least in Israel would know of. And yes, you're right, land of decoration, it is the place where the temple used to be and where God's people worship. But you're not putting these facts together. You're saying the nations are literal, but these nations, these specific areas, are not literal.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that when we get to Daniel in a few minutes, but let's read the rest of their explanation first.
Okay. The kings of the entire inhabited earth. Read Revelation 16, and they've got something from 17 and 19. The book of Revelation foretold an attack by the king of the earth on the King of Kings, the heavenly Jesus. But unable to reach into the heavens, the rebels attack the earthly supporters of the kingdom. The kings of the earth then find themselves on the losing side in the battle at Armageddon. Notice that they come to their end after attacking Jehovah's people. This is similar to what is said about Gog of Magog. And here they also have a footnote. The Bible also speaks of an attack. Excuse me. The Bible also speaks of an attack by the modern-day Assyrian, who will seek to wipe out God's people, and they reference Micah 5:5. The four attacks foretold to come upon God's people by Gog of Magog, by the king of the north, by the kings of the earth, and by the Assyrian, may refer to the same attack under different names.
Well, also, this is this part about the Assyrian is new to me. Do you remember any of this when you were a pioneer?
No, I don't remember.
We do remember, of course, there are speculations about the king of the north, which have changed over the decades, and I think even have changed since this article, this book was published a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
But their use of Micah 5:5, I don't recall that at all from my days as a pioneer. So the idea now that there's 4 different texts and 4 different names for this personage or group of personages that attack God's people, but you're being so unspecific here. Who are the people under attack when you're talking about Assyria, a king who is setting his palatial tents between the Great Sea, the Mediterranean, and the land of decoration where the temple was in those days? You're being so unspecific. So that you have to be, because of course your interpretation is always about you. But the text won't allow you to do this. But let's read their last paragraph here.
In view of the foregoing, what may we conclude about the identity of Gog? First, Gog is not a spirit creature. Second, Gog refers to earthly nations that will attack God's people in the near future. Those nations will undoubtedly form a coalition. That is, they will band together somehow. Why? Since God's people are found earthwide, the nations will need to be united in purpose and action to attack them. And then they reference Matthew 24. Make no mistake, Satan will be the evil mastermind behind the attack. He has long influenced worldly nations to oppose true worship. But Ezekiel's prophetic words about Gog of Magog focus on the role of the earthly nations that will attack Jehovah's people.
Well, again, too generic, earthly nations. No, these are very specific.
Yeah.
All of these texts that you're citing here. Revelation is the least specific of them because it does talk about a coalition of nations, which is your new definition for Gog of Magog. But the other texts, this new one, this Micah text, this Daniel text, and especially Paul, as we should add to the mix here, 2 Thessalonians 2, the man of lawlessness, all these texts are related. I would say instead of going to Revelation 16 and 19, they should go to 13. The great enemy of God in the last days, one of them we know, Babylon the Great, but you misdefine anyway. But the other one is the beast. And you don't do much with the beast except do the generic thing, which is the beast is a nation, it's a national power, it's a kingdom. No, in the Bible it's an individual. It's the apostate, the great apostate, who is the Antichrist. But in Daniel 11, he appears to be the king of the north. So why don't we look at the whole context they tell us to read here, which is, 6 verses?
Daniel 11, 40 to 45.
Yeah. All right, I'll read it from the ESV. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, but the king of the north shall rush upon him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall come into countries, and shall overflow and pass through. He shall come into the glorious land, and tens of thousands shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand. Is it clear where this is all happening?
Well, mine says he will also enter into the land of the decoration. And I think in the footnote it says, or beauty.
The beauteous land, or the glorious land. Tens of thousands shall fall. Where? In the beauteous land, the glorious land. Tens of thousands shall fall, but these shall be delivered out of his hand. Edom, Moab, and the main part of the Ammonites. Now that's pretty specific. He shall stretch out his hand. Who's this stretching out his hand? The king of the north. Against the countries. So he's a destroyer of countries. He's not just interested in
says
you.
Is thrusting out his hand against the lands.
The land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall become ruler of the treasures of gold and of silver and all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Cushites shall follow in his train. How's that read in there?
Silver and gold over the desirable things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians will be at his steps.
So is this specific enough about the geography of the attack and who the attacker is and what he's interested in? You have him always interested in God's people. That's you. Yeah. But in here, he's interested in destroying all the nations round about the promised land. But then something happens. I'll read it from the ESV. But news from the east and the north shall alarm him, and he shall go out with great fury to destroy and devote many to destruction. So this is why it links to Revelation. Remember the beast in Revelation, why the whole world worships him, because of his power to destroy. They have never seen a man with this power before. And this is the vision of Antichrist that the early church believed in, and the Jews believed in before them. He'll devote many to destruction, and at the end, he will focus attention on God's people, all right, but where are they? It says in verse 45, he shall pitch his palatial tents between the sea, Mediterranean, and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end with none to help him. So when will the destroyer, the desolator, be destroyed? When he turns his attention to the glorious holy mountain.
Yeah.
This fits with all of the rest of Isaiah and Zechariah, etc.
But you can definitely see it's that God's people here are not the earth-wide followers of Jehovah's Witnesses that they want you to think of, because it keeps relating it to that specific location. And if you keep going in 12, Daniel, who doesn't know about you, is told it's his people.
Michael,
that's
the great
Israel.
prince who has charge of your people. That's Daniel's people, yeah.
Yeah.
So Michael, remember, he's in Revelation 12, and we have the beast in Revelation 11 and Revelation 13, and on throughout the rest of Revelation. There's a connection that you're just not being allowed to see by the Watchtower.
You jump to your own assumptions. Oh, you wanted to go to Micah?
Let's do Micah 2, where they find this Assyrian. And I'm intrigued by this. So what verse are they going to cite here in Micah?
They say Micah 5:5.
Okay. Do you want to read this part from the New World Translation? Because this is important, the way they translate this.
Just verse 5?
Start at 5 and then work our way back through the context.
Okay. 5 says, and he will bring... Oh, no, that's the end of 4, I guess. Should the Assyrian invade our land and tread on our fortified towers, we will raise up against him 7 shepherds, yes, 8 princes of mankind. And they will shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances. And he will rescue us from the Assyrian when he invades our land and treads on our territory.
Okay, the ESV says, and let's keep in mind the only verse they want you to look at here is Micah 5:5. There's a reason for that. But even just with 5:5, when the Assyrian comes into our land and treads in our palaces, then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princes of men. And they, that is the princes or shepherds that are raised up, shall shepherd the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances, and he shall deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land and treads within our border. So you have, if you read back now, which we'll do in a second, the Messiah is going to come to deliver Israel, but they are going to fight a war with the sons of Assyria. Well, who are they today? Well, if you know your geography today, then ancient Assyria becomes modern Iran, and ancient Babylon, which was also built by the same man, Nimrod, right? Nimrod created Nineveh and the great cities of that region, as well as the great cities around Babylon and Babylon itself. So a war between Israel, us here, we, and Assyria and Iraq. It's scarily parallel to the situation in our day, isn't it?
Verse 5, did yours say trample or tread?
Tread. Mine says tread in our palaces.
Yeah.
So again, what does that remind you of?
Well, the trampling, the Gentile times, where the trampling is of, which we never made anything of the fact that it's called Gentile times. So that kind of tells you who's being trampled.
Yeah, it's Jerusalem, of course, in the famous text that we use as our basic text for the Gentile times idea, that Jerusalem will be trampled on by the nations until the times of the Gentiles are over.
Yeah.
What then? Well, this gives you the what
Yeah.
then. And now it connects to another great thought about the woman giving birth here. So let's read now the verses just before verse 5 in the New World Translation, if you would.
Now you are slashing yourselves, O daughter, under attack. A siege is laid against us. With a rod they strike the judge of Israel on the cheek. And you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, the one too little to be among the thousands of Judah, from you will come out for me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose origin is from ancient times and from the days of long ago. So he will give them up until the time that she who is to give birth has given birth, and the rest of his brothers will return to the people of Israel. Well, you would, as a witness, you'd take all that literally.
Well, you take verse 2 literally, but read to the end so everybody gets the flow
Okay.
here.
He will stand up and shepherd in the strength of Jehovah, in the superiority of the name of Jehovah his God, and they will dwell in security. For now his greatness will reach the ends of the earth. And that's when you get into the 5. Again, do you want me to reread it?
Well, the last part of that verse, really, that extends into 5 is, he shall be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be their peace.
He will bring peace, yeah.
He will be their peace, and he will be great more than just in the promised land, though, but to the ends of the earth. Now, who is the he here, though?
The Messiah, right?
The Messiah, the same one who's born in Bethlehem Ephrathah. It says in the next verse, verse 3, he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labor is given birth. Are you reminded of a certain passage we all kind of know, which is Revelation 12, the great sign of the woman about to give birth and the dragon's ferocity because he knows his time is short, etc. So what's he going to do? Well, world war here. It certainly seems that world war is centered in Iraq, Iran, and Israel.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, and you realize the double think of the Watchtower, because you do take verse 2 very literally.
Yeah. And you think, he's born there, and you use that as a wonderful scripture of the Messiah, of proof of who the Messiah is. So, but you don't take the people as his people, or Israel as still being applicable here. But by the time you get past where we read into 7 and 8, he talks about the remaining ones of Jacob, and he uses Jacob twice.
The remnant of Jacob.
Yeah.
Are going to be among the nations in the midst of many people, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of the sheep.
Yeah.
So the terror of the lion of the tribe of Judah here, the nations are going to one day feel the terror of the tribe of Judah, and of course the lion of the tribe of Judah, we all know who he is. So this is all about Messiah and what Messiah ultimately is going to do here on earth.
Yeah.
You would never know that because they get to choose the phrases and the clauses they want you to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's our link?
We're linking to a video we did called Messiah Will Give Them Up Until She Gives Birth. So I can't remember what that video was. But
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
Everybody should watch it, right?
Yep.
See you soon.
Bye.